Welcome back to Breakfast at Stinson's. This is John Asher Thompson. Today we have Coach Dean Campbell with us. I am thrilled to have Coach Dean Campbell. He's a good friend of mine. He's a football coach, Austin, Texas. In fact, I would say the guy personifies what it means to be a football coach in the state of Texas. Just to rattle off a few: A&M, New Mexico, Texas, North Carolina, Rice Tech, Air Force, Arkansas. He's retired now, been through a lot, lived a lot, and we're happy to have him today. I want to welcome Coach Dean Campbell with us. Coach Campbell is a personal friend of mine.
Thank you, John. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
I have a tremendous amount of affection for Dean and a history with him. He has coached I have three boys at Hyde Park, and had been coaching at Hyde Park for years. I think you're still working at Hyde Park in some capacity or involved in some way, but you were athletic director, I believe, as well, and head football coach, which I think you were doing as sort of your retirement. And I remember Hyde Park football before you arrived, and I know what Hyde Park football is doing today, and you were able to do some extraordinary things there, and that's exciting. And I was thinking this morning that you remind me of one of my favorite Johnny Cash songs, which, have you heard that song, I've Been Everywhere, Man?
I have.
So I just want to read off among the places that I believe you've worked and done very well as a football coach, in addition to playing for the University of Texas, which I want to hear about as well. Texas A&M, New Mexico, Texas, North Carolina, Rice, Tech, Air Force, Arkansas, and Hyde Park. I don't know if I left any out.
No, I believe that's all.
That's all. Not many. We had, I will tell you, it's funny, we had someone recently who's a Hollywood producer who's done very well producing a lot of big-time shows, teenage shows and movies, and kind of the romantic comedies and things. And it's funny, he's had an incredible career, very successful, but you know what he really wants to do? And then I said, what do you want to do the next 5-10 years of your life? You know what he said?
Coach.
Yeah, he wants to be a football coach in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. A friend of mine had a joke about this guy and wanting to, do this and do that, be a banker, make a bunch of money so he could go fishing, be a fisherman on the coast in Mexico. Someone said, well, you could just buy a boat and go down there and start now. But anyway, he's doing great things. Yeah. We were happy to have him. So
good. Let's
start here. And if you would, just tell us a little about yourself. How did you get to where you are today? Walk us through, if you would, your upbringing, your youth, how you got into coaching, just kind of a quick overview of your bio.
Well, I grew up in Austin. My earliest memories of living in Austin, we lived off of 37th and Red River, which is real close to Hancock Golf Course and not far from Memorial Stadium. My mom and dad met when my dad was in the Army, and he was from Ohio and my mom was from Austin, and they got married and settled down there in Austin. And so I grew up, I think until I was in about the second or third grade over there on East 37th Street, and then we moved over into the Bracker Woods area, and went to Bracker Woods High School, Bracker Woods Elementary School, and I went to O. Henry Middle School, and then to Austin High School, and then on to the university.
I'm guessing, just for the millennials listening, there was probably no ACL at that time. I'm guessing ACL
Nope.
Music Festival or South by Southwest.
No.
I don't know anybody like today. Did anybody imagine Austin without those things? And
I
think
know.
the University of Texas wasn't their golf course Hancock? Isn't that where they played back then? Or
Back when Hancock Golf Course was first built, that was the original Austin Country Club.
Is that right?
Uh-huh. And the back nine was over across Red River into in that area, that square block, which is now, I don't know what it's called. It used to be Hancock Shopping Center.
Oh, right, where they have a coffee shop over there, and yep, an
had a Sears
H-E-D
store
or something. Yep.
Yeah, but that's where the back nine was.
Golly.
And they closed that down, and for how many years now, Hancock's just been 9 holes.
Yeah.
But I can remember walking across the street. My mom would watch me cross the street. I was probably I think I was about 7 or 8 when I first started playing golf. And in the summer, you could play, if you were under 12 years of age, you could play as many holes as you could get in from 8 o'clock until noon for 25 cents.
Oh my gosh, that is
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. So
Wow. Well, I wonder what it
that's how
costs to go play Lions today. I bet it's $25 if you're under 12.
Yeah, I don't even know if they have a price for anybody that's under the age of
Yeah.
12 or not
So
anymore.
what year was that? When did you get out of, let's just say, when did you graduate from Austin High?
I graduated in May of 1967.
1967. There's a lot going on, obviously, in the United States. There's a lot of, I don't know, Vietnam's going, there are protests going on around the country at the colleges. I don't know what year Kent State was. What was Austin like as a high schooler in 67?
It was still more of a college town. It hadn't gotten that big yet. I think there was less than 20,000 students at the university, and you could still get around town, pretty easy without being bumper to bumper everywhere you went.
Yeah, and we didn't. There wasn't even Mopac yet, right? They didn't have that highway.
Oh no.
Yeah, no.
No.
Yeah, or the
No
Pennybacker
Mopac.
Bridge, was that built yet?
Nope.
Wow.
No, none of that was there. So it was a great city, good place to live, good place to raise a family. When I was young, my mom would, kick me out the door in the mornings and say, "Go play, and I'll see you at dinner." And there's 4 or 5 kids in the neighborhood, and we all, like to do the same things, and we'd hang out, and we'd show up at somebody's house at lunch, and somebody'd make us a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then we'd go back outside and play till dinner.
Yeah.
And the neighborhoods were safe, and that's just how you grew up. And then when I got to be, I think, 10 years old, my grandfather owned a construction business, and so I started working for him in the summers. And I did that until I graduated from the University of Texas. And
Wow.
Back then there weren't summer camps for any sports at all. In fact, if you played high school football or any football in the state of Texas, you could not go to a padded football camp. It was against the rules. And so anyway, I never went to any camps. We never took family vacations. My parents were just blue collar. They had to, make a living every day. And so that's all I knew growing up was, working in the summers, and then after work was over, going somewhere to work out, to prepare for football season. But
Westlake High School, I think, was founded in about 69. Does that sound right?
I believe it was.
So it wasn't there even. So Austin,
No.
So I graduated from high school in 87 and came down to UT. So I was 20 years behind you. But when I came down, it was interesting. There was the economy had really just collapsed. The savings and loan crisis had begun. I had friends who went bankrupt in Dallas through real estate, and so it was pretty bleak down here. And my recollection was it was kind of like, well, there was a little bit of real estate, there was government, and there was the University of Texas. That was kind of it. And then you had ranches. So you had some oil and had some ranchers. And it's funny because Austin High, as I remember, of course, Westlake, I had some friends from Westlake. That was kind of the redneck school. Sorry to my Westlake friends. I know it's not that way now. My nephews have graduated from there. But Austin High had its share of cowboys, and I went to college with, several folks who were, their families were into ranching and other things. What was the demographic like when you were there with the Austin High kids? I mean, you said your parents were blue collar. What was it like there?
It's very diverse. It sits right on the edge of, Terrytown and that West Austin area over there, which is very affluent. And then it also is close enough to I-35 that we drew students from east of I-35. And, and so you had every ethnicity that there was. You had every socioeconomic area in town. And so it's a real melting pot and had been for years. Austin High is the oldest high school west of the Mississippi.
Wow.
And still in service, so to speak.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, and my grandparents went there. My mother went there, so.
Golly.
growing up in Austin, that's all there was. That's all you knew for a while. And then McCallum and Travis came along.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, then Lanier, I guess, was next, and that's about all there was when I was in high school. We had McCallum, Travis, Lanier, and then my senior year they opened Reagan, and that's about all there was.
And I think Reagan has sort of moved on, transformed, and it's maybe an art school or something. I forget what Reagan is today, but
yeah, they've changed a couple times.
Yeah.
But so it was a different, certainly a different town
Yeah.
than what it is now. But it was a great place to grow up.
Well, real quick, and just out of curiosity, we'll hit it quick and move on. But I am curious, how does a guy from Ohio meet a girl from Austin in the '60s?
Well, he was in the Army, and he was stationed at Camp Mabry for a while.
And Camp Mabry at that point was a regular Army base, wasn't it?
It was. It was an active Army base, and my mom was working there as a secretary, and so that's how they met.
All right. So you played football at Austin High. Get us through to playing football. Now,
Okay.
You weren't an offensive lineman. I know you're a defensive back guy, right?
Yeah.
So talk about that. How you played football? How'd you get into it? And then how'd you end up at UT and then coaching?
Okay. The destiny of my life can be traced to one specific day, and it was in 1957, and I was 8 years old, and they had just hired a new football coach at the University of Texas, a guy by the name of Darrell Royal.
Hey, Coach, I'm going to stop just because I don't know who all's listening to this, but maybe you're in New York City and need to understand something if you're in New York City. Darrell Royal is the gold standard, I think. Would you agree with University of Texas football coaching?
Yes.
Yeah.
No
I mean,
doubt.
this guy is a true legend, was a legend in Austin and the state of Texas. So go ahead.
Coach Royal had moved in just down the street from us. He was about 5, maybe 6 houses away from us. So there's a bunch of us playing football out in the yard one afternoon, and we had not met him yet. My parents had, but he comes driving down the street there, and he sees us out there throwing the ball around. And this is probably mid to late April. And he had just gotten hired in January, I believe. So he's coming home, and he sees us, and he pulls over, and he says, "Hey, you guys come over here." And he gets out, and he opens up his trunk, and he pulls out a big old green duffel bag. They're full of helmets. It's full of helmets. And now these helmets are orange with a white stripe down the middle. And that's what they had been wearing. And he said, "We're going to change the color of our helmets next year to white." And he said, "I thought you guys might like to have one of these helmets." Well, that helmet, I'm sitting here at my desk, is still sitting here on my desk. And
Wow.
So he says, "Now you guys are welcome to come over and watch us practice when we start playing in the fall." And he said, "We'd love to have you anytime." So we thanked him for the helmets, and he left, and I ran in and told my mom that, "Hey, Coach Royal said he wants me to come to practice every day next year." She said, "Well, when your dad comes home, we'll talk about that." So my dad checked with Coach Royal, and they said, "Oh, sure, we'd love to have him." So from that day on, I think for the next 4 years before I started playing middle school football, my mom would take me over there and drop me off, and we just lived 10 minutes from the practice field. And my dad would pick me up on his way home from work. There was a couple of occasions where Coach Royal brought me home. But anyway, I'm sure I was
Okay, I got to stop you. I got to stop you because I'm about to jump out of my skin. So
okay.
that is so the magnitude of Coach Royal dropping you off at your house is, I can't even imagine that today.
Well, see,
how amazing is that? That is so cool.
Well, they didn't film practice.
Yeah.
And so there was nothing to stay up at the office till 10 o'clock at night doing. And football was a whole lot simpler back then than it is now.
Uh-huh.
And so after practice, the coaches would go in and they'd shower and go home.
That is awesome.
And so, from that time on, all I wanted to do was play football and ultimately play for Coach Royal. And then, I was just so fascinated with the game that, I wanted to, at an early age, I wanted to be a coach. I wanted to be like Coach Royal. when I graduated. So that was, that was the one day that I can look back in my life and say, this is, this is when one guy, because one guy took the time to stop and show interest in a bunch of little knothead boys that, he influenced not only my coaching career, but my whole life.
Wow.
And so I go on and I start playing football in middle school. Then I get into high school, and my dad died when I was a sophomore in high school. And so my high school football coaches were my male role models. They were like fathers to me. Mm. And even going back to my middle school coach, he had had a huge influence, on my life just because of the way that he was and the type of person he was. And so when I get out of high school, I don't have any scholarship offers anywhere. And there's a gentleman by the name of Rooster Andrews.
Oh, yeah.
That owned a sporting goods store in Austin.
Heck yeah.
And he had kids that I played with. And he kind of took me under his wing when I lost my dad. And would, come to my games and support me. And so he recommended that I go down and walk on at Blinn Junior College in Brenham. He said, I know the coaches down there. They'll take care of you. They'll treat you good. He said, it won't be easy to make it. But if you can make it there, then you might have a chance to, come back and walk on at Texas. And so
you paved the way for Cam Newton.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I go down there and I walk on. Back then they had a rule in junior college. You could only have 33 players on your roster. And we had 150 kids trying out. One of the things that I didn't know was there was about 25 of those kids that had signed with Division I schools. And then they couldn't get in. They couldn't pass their SAT test. So they were at Blinn. And we had a couple other guys like Cam Newton, that maybe got kicked out somewhere and ended up at the junior college. So anyway, the talent level was unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so I go down there and, when I'm trying out and I had played wide receiver in high school and running back. And so
how was Austin High? Were they good? Were you guys good in high school?
I think my junior and senior year, we were 7-3 both years. Mm-hmm. Those were in the years where only one team in district made the playoffs. Mm-hmm. And so we finished second both years. Okay. And so we didn't get the chance to advance. But
who'd you finish second to, just out of curiosity? Like
McCallum.
Oh, okay. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, they had good
This is a walk down memory lane, probably more interesting for Austin folks than other, but I find it interesting. So, okay, so you go to Blinn, and what happens?
Well, so I walk on, and about the middle of the second week, I sprained my ankle pretty bad. So now I can't practice. So anyway, so Rooster and his brother, he had a brother named Bunny Andrews, who was he was Rooster's salesman. He knew everybody in the state.
You say brothers named Rooster and Bunny?
Bunny, Bunny.
Yeah, that's awesome. I remember Rooster Andrews. He had that sporting goods store that, it was here when I got here, and it was kind of the only game in town when I got to Austin.
It was. And of course Rooster was an All-American at Texas. He was a kicker. He drop kicked the ball.
Wow.
And anyway, he was a manager and then actually played in the games. But anyway, so they're checking on me all the time, and the coaches at Blinn, told him, said, it doesn't look good for Dean because he's hurt and he's, we got some pretty good kids here. And so Bunny asked him, he said, well, have you done any kicking yet? And they said, no, we really haven't worked on our kicking much. And he said, well, you better not cut Dean, because he said he holds all the Austin High kicking records, which was a bald-faced lie. I did kick extra points and a few field goals, but only because there was nobody else on the team that could kick. And so anyway, they end up keeping me at Blinn because there's nobody else there that can kick. And so I start off and I make the team, and all I'm doing is, kicking. Then I got well and started competing for, at the wide receiver position. So anyway, I ended up starting by midseason, and then I started the next year. Well, then I didn't have any offers again coming out of Blinn. So I wrote Coach Royal a letter and asked him, if I could walk on. And he wrote me back and said, Dean, I've been waiting for you to walk on since you're 8 years old. He said, come on.
Oh,
So,
wow.
so I
Golly.
walked on over there, and he told me, he said, I think the best thing for you is going to be, we'll redshirt you this year, which was the 69 season. And you can kind of learn, what we're doing. And then, that next spring, you'll have a chance to compete for, position. So I'm on the scout team all of 69.
And how Texas do that year?
In 69,
Uh-huh.
they won a national
Yeah,
championship.
I wanted to get that in.
Yeah.
Not a
So,
bad season. Did you
yeah,
did you get a ring? Did they do that?
I
Did
did.
they?
I
Oh,
did.
that's cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And
Nice.
so
And
anyway, so we
wait,
go.
sorry, Dean. Who were
Yeah.
the big time the players on that team? The ones that the household names of '69 team.
Well, offensively, James Street was a quarterback,
Mm-hmm.
and Steve Wooster was All-American fullback, and Ted Coy and Jim Bertelson were the running backs, and Cotton Spire was wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And on defense, we had Glenn Halsell was All-American linebacker, and Freddie Steinmark, who they
Mm-hmm.
made the movie about,
Yep.
was a defensive back for us, outstanding player. Bill Zaplak, who played at McCallum High School, was a defensive end. But anyway, we had a really, really good football team, and
Yeah.
it was just a, kind of a Cinderella season, and
Oh yeah.
a lot of fun, just to be a part of that, even
Yeah.
though I wasn't playing. But so
You're,
we go through spring, and I get a chance to start in the spring game, and had a good game, and then Coach Royal called me in right after school was out in May and said, we're going to put you on scholarship.
oh, nice.
So Scott Inspire was coming back. It was his senior year and going to be my junior year. So we alternated every play. We were what they call the messengers.
Uh-huh.
Coach Royal would, give us the play, and we'd run it into the huddle. So end up, we won the national championship again in 1970. So we had a 30-game win streak going back to the middle of 1968 all the way to the Cotton Bowl. After the 70 season, we got beat by Notre Dame in the Cotton Bowl. But my intentions when I went to walk on, I never dreamed that I would, ever get to play, but I knew I wanted to coach. And I felt like just being associated with that program and with Coach Royal and all the coaches on his staff, that would benefit me down the road in my career as a coach. I ended up coaching for 3 of the assistants that were on that staff. I worked for Fred Akers at Texas. He was the head coach at Texas.
And you coached defensive backs for him?
I did. I worked for Emory Ballard. That was my first job. I went to A&M with Emory Ballard. He had been my position coach. And then I worked for Spike Dykes at Texas Tech. And all 3 of those guys had been on Coach Royal's staff, while I was there. So so it paid, really paid dividends for me. So anyway, I graduate, and Coach Ballard offers me a job as a freshman coach, which back then, everybody had freshman teams because freshmen were not eligible to play on the varsity. And so I go to A&M in 74, and I guess it was the start of the 76 season maybe when they made freshmen eligible. And so by 77, nobody was playing freshman games anymore because they were all, pulling them up on the varsity, and they made them eligible to play. But then they also made them eligible to be redshirted. Prior to that, you couldn't redshirt anybody. You came in, you played on the freshman team as a freshman, and then you had 3 years eligibility on the varsity. So then when they made freshmen eligible, they, said, well, you can either play or not. You can redshirt, and then you had 4 years total. You had 5 years to get in, 4 years of playing. So anyway, so I coached at A&M for 9 years. Coach Ballard stepped down. Tom Wilson was the head coach my last 3 years, and then we got fired. Coach Akers offered me a job at Texas, so I went there next. I coached for him for 5 years.
Who were some of the notable players you coached at Texas?
Probably the best player maybe that I ever coached was a guy by the name of Jerry Gray.
Oh yeah, I remember Jerry Gray.
He was a safety for us.
Oh yeah.
And two-time first-team All-American, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. Really a good player.
Oh yeah. Where'd he go play pro ball? I know he got drafted. He was a big time.
He played for the Rams most all of his career.
Yeah.
So anyway, Coach Akers steps down. I go to North Carolina with a guy by the name of Dick Crum as a head coach. Great guy. Enjoyed my time there at North Carolina. Beautiful place, great school. Dick stepped down. I go to Rice with Fred Goldsmith, who had been the defensive coordinator at Arkansas, and he got the head job at Rice. From there, I went to Texas Tech with Spike, which was a great time for my family. They got to grow up and stay in the same school. We stayed there 9 years.
And Spike just passed away this year. He was another real Texas legend.
So from there, I go to the Air Force Academy with Fisher DeBerry. We were there 8 years. Great place to coach. The kids that you get to work with every day are the cream of the crop. Really enjoyed our time there. And then I was at Arkansas for 2.5 years. And then at that point, got a chance to interview for the head job at Hyde Park High School. And there's a guy by the name of Bob Liverman who was on the school board, and we had been friends when I was coaching at Texas. We went to Hyde Park Church together. Cindy and I, my wife, we taught their 2 boys in Sunday school when they were 3 years old.
Wow.
So he called me one day and he said, "Hey, we're looking for a head coach down here if you're interested." And I talked to Cindy and I said, we've been gone from the state of Texas for 10 years now. And, our kids were growing up, and we were hoping they were going to get married soon, start having a family. And so we made the decision to retire from college coaching, and we moved back, and I've lived in Llano. We had some property in Llano, and that was in 2010. And so ended up coaching at Hyde Park for 7 years.
Yeah.
And loved every minute of it.
Well, I appreciate that, and I love that story. And you had a focus of what you wanted to do. How did you, maybe as a young man, and then comparing that to how you look at life today, how did you make decisions back then and contrast with maybe today how you would advise young people to make decisions if you were giving them counsel? How do you approach the decision-making process, if you will?
Well, when I was younger, it was simply, okay, what's going to make me happy now? When you're young, you tend to be a little more impulsive. Your mindset is more ready, fire, aim. And then, as you get older, I think that changes, through experience and one thing or another. I know for me, I grew up in a Christian home. My mom and dad, were heavily involved in the church. My dad taught a Sunday school class. So we were in church, all the time. I was a believer from a very early age, but I didn't really understand what it meant to have a personal relationship with Jesus until later on in my life. And so as I got older and got into that and started, studying the Bible and all of that, and I learned that the best way to make a decision is to go to God in prayer and ask him to give you wisdom as to what to do, whether to go left or go right. And so instead of being as impulsive, before I understood, that I had somebody to go to and I'd make a decision on my own. Now, I'm very slow to make a decision. I spend a lot of time, asking myself what's the right thing to do, and then, praying about it, because, as a coach, you have so many decisions to make on a daily basis in regards to, dealing with young people. You can do so much good and so much harm by making the right or wrong decision about, how to work with young people. And so, I'd had a pastor once that he used to always talk about prayers, short prayers that we can use, in the mornings to get started. And so he taught me one that went like this. Dear Lord, please put your arm around my shoulder today and your hand over my mouth. And so, I still to this day, and this has been 25 years ago, I still use that prayer, because every time you have a situation come up during the day that needs a quick answer, if you've got just enough time to pause and say, God, give me some direction here now, because I know I'll screw it up if if you don't help me. And so many times I would think I'm going to say something, and then I'd bite my tongue and remember that prayer, but also a prayer that my grandmother used to always talk to us about. She'd say, just pray to God that you will chew your words 100 times before you spit them out. And what she meant by that was, how is this going to sound to that person? Is that the right way to talk to a young man about, maybe he's made a mistake in school, or he's, being late to practice every day or whatever. And so that's how I've, based every decision I've made for the last 25 years.
Was there a point in time, or is this an evolution on your part, where you went from being young and impulsive to being thoughtful? And you're in a special role as a coach where you've got these young, impressionable kids. But talk about, was there like a huzzah moment in time where it just hit you and you changed, or was it something that you just came to over a period of time as you grew up?
Yeah, I think, I was blessed to be able to work with a lot of great men, especially all the head coaches I worked for. And I learned something from each and every one of them. And they were all good about, coaching the coaches on how to coach kids. I remember, Coach Akers was always talking about, coaching from a positive aspect, not being a bully or always belittling the kids. Try to build them up. When they make a mistake, correct them, put them back out there, encourage them that, hey, you can do better than this, that type of attitude. So I learned something about, decision making and working with kids from every coach that I worked for. And I remember, Spike, if he always would talk about if we had a kid that, gotten in trouble and maybe the majority of the staff wanted to get rid of him because they felt like he was a bad guy in the locker room and just bad for the team. And Spike used to always say, well, I'm going to tell you one thing. He said, that guy right there was me. 25 years ago, that was me. And if my coaches hadn't given me second chances, I wouldn't be, where I am today. Mm-hmm. And so he'd always say, I've seen sicker dogs get well. In other words, let's keep working with this young man and give him a chance, and he may come around. So I would just say it was a gradual thing, and I was fortunate enough to, learn something from everybody I worked for.
How did you prioritize your life when you had Cindy and you've got a couple of kids? What was your day like? Obviously, and I'm interested in actually getting into the weeds, and I ask everybody this question because I think it's interesting. I may be the only person who thinks it's interesting, but like, how much sleep did you get? Did you sleep well? Did you get up really early? Did you set your alarm?
Yeah.
And then as you planned your day, or you planned your year or whatever, how would your day look like, fitting into this plan or decision that you made and prioritizing your time?
Right. When I was coaching in New Mexico, when I went there, they on all their T-shirts and everything, they had in big letters, WIN. You think, well, okay, they're talking about winning. They want to win. But it really stood for what's important now. And so I took that and I used that and still do. But in everything that I've done in coaching and with my family. And so when it came up an opportunity, maybe to take a job somewhere, I would sit down with Cindy and say, okay, where are the kids right now? Are they in a good situation? Do they need a fresh start? Because that was the most important thing to me was, my family. And if she didn't feel like moving at that particular time would benefit them, then we wouldn't do it. So it was always, I try to, first of all, use that with my family, then also with my players. if a young man was, say he was struggling in both academically and on the field, I'd bring him in and I'd say, look, what's the most important thing right now? And I'd say, you may say football. I say it's academics, because that's why you're here. That's why you're going to college, is to get your education. And until you, get back up to speed, I think you need to go to study hall, in the afternoons and catch back up. When you catch up, then, come back with us. But that's what's important now, way more important, than the football games. So I think it's just, priorities. You prioritize everything that you do as far as, your work, your family. You're talking about what time did I get up? When I lived at the Air Force Academy, we actually lived on the campus there. And I was usually at the office at 5, because I'm an early morning guy, and I like to go to bed early. Mm-hmm. And so I knew I had certain things I needed to get done, and I wanted to get up there and get them done before everybody else got there and you started, talking about other things, because that was what was important now to me.
I'm doing the math here. If you're at the office at 5, that sounds to me like you had to get up before 5 a.m.
Yeah, well, yeah, but it only.
I'm guessing you weren't playing with your kids in the morning.
No, but that was a good thing about Coach DeBerry. He wanted you to be home and eat dinner with your family every night. So, yeah, I was able to get home. And, nice. Of course, by then, my kids were in college.
Yeah.
So they were gone.
Have you ever had a crisis of faith or a crisis of belief system in terms of, at some point thinking like, this isn't working? I need to make a change. I need to do something different. Not necessarily not in football, but I need to move, or this is anything like that in your career?
There's times every coach has to decide, what are your goals? A lot of guys are driven to be a head coach. They feel like if I don't get a title, I'm not going to get a head job. And so in order to get a title, I got to move, and they end up, chasing this thing that they think is going to ultimately make them happy. I remember there was a guy that I worked with at Air Force, and he was that way. He was just, I got to get out of here. I got to get another job. And I told him, I said, happiness is a journey. It's not a destination. And you've got to learn to be happy and appreciate what you've got where you are now. I said, you got the best job in the world working for Fisher DeBerry. Are you kidding me? I said, we don't have knothead kids to deal with. What better situation could you want? I can't get a head job. I'm not a coordinator. I got to move. And so I saw a lot of coaches like that, but I made the decision that being a head coach was not really that important to me. I was content to be the very best position coach that I could be, because I knew that I would ultimately have more time with my family. Mm-hmm. Head coaches, they have no time at all. I mean, they're 24/7, 365 days a year. That just never appealed to me. Coaching NFL never appealed to me because the seasons are so long. Mm-hmm. But I just enjoyed doing what I was doing, and every place I went, I was happy. Mm-hmm. And I only left one school. I left Rice to go to Tech. Every other time that I moved, it was because our head coach had lost his job, and the new coach didn't keep anybody coming in. Mm-hmm. So
nature of the business.
Yes.
September 2015. Does that ring a bell?
Yeah.
St. Michael's, yeah. 26-23. I remember that well. Yeah. Can you talk about that? What happened? How that impacted you, and any, or not, or yeah.
Going into that game that summer, I had gone and had a complete physical. They did EKG, stress test, everything, and I got a good report on everything. And I had done this on a regular basis because my dad died of a heart attack when he was 46, and so I knew that I had inherited that gene. And so I worked hard to stay, in decent shape. I mean, I wasn't a marathon runner or anything like that, but tried to keep my weight, down and work out. The only thing that I didn't do a good job of was getting enough rest, especially during football. because when I was coaching at Hyde Park and living in Llano, I left Llano at 4:30 every morning because I wanted to beat the traffic and be at the office by 6. And so after that game was over, we're riding home on the bus, and I had a heart attack. And of course, I knew immediately what was going on. And our trainer was sitting across the aisle from me, and I leaned over to her, and I said, "Hey, I don't want to make a big deal out of this, but as soon as we get off this bus, I think you need to check me because I might be having a heart attack."
Wow.
And so she did. And she said, "Yeah, you are, and we got to go. We got to get help right now." So I was only like 3 miles from the best heart hospital in Austin. And so they got me there real quick, and I had 100% blockage in one of my arteries. So they went in there and put a stent in there, and they got to it, real quick. So I didn't have a whole lot of heart damage to my heart. And I was blessed to be able to, get back. I only missed actually 2 games.
I remember that. We were all shocked that you were back on the sidelines.
That was a day that you'll never forget. And I since then I've paid even more attention to my health and getting more exercise, and I feel great.
Did that affect timing, your retirement thoughts and moving on, or was that not really part of the decision?
After the 2013 year, we went to the semifinals and had a really good year, and we had built the program up, and a lot of people thought, well, we can't do much better than this. Coach Campbell's probably going to retire, and so I thought, well, maybe these people want me to retire. So I gave it some thought at that point. But after in 2015, after I had the heart attack, I talked to Cindy, and I said, I'm not going to let this take me out of coaching. I said, I still enjoy coaching, and and I'm anxious to get back out there. And so I coached 2 more years. And, if I lived in West Austin, I'd still be coaching. But the thing that just wore me down was the commute. I had an hour and a half one way.
Wow.
Every day. Now during the fall, I would stay there on Thursday nights and Friday nights. I wouldn't drive home after, JV games or varsity games. But the rest of the year, I wanted to be home at night. And so anyway, that's when I made the decision to step down, and I've never regretted it. And they've hired a great guy in Chuck Peterson.
Oh yeah,
I think
great.
He's doing a tremendous job.
Well, I credit you with turning, like I said earlier, turning the program around. I remember what it was like before you got there, and so it's been great. About to wrap up. Just curious, what do you what you see, and I know you're not coaching day to day at this point, but what's the difference in your opinion in the environment today with kids and the players, and people like to talk about social media, and then on the one hand, you have people saying, well, everybody, the parental generation always has concerns about whatever's going on. It was Elvis Presley, and then it was the computer, and now we got social media.
Right.
So is it degree? Is it a difference of kind? What do you think? What do you think about where we're headed? What you're seeing with the kids today?
John, it's completely different from when I was growing up. We didn't have any of that electronic stuff. There was no social media. There, like I said earlier, there was no camps to go to in summer. So most everybody worked, and I think it's a shame that more kids don't get that experience of working. I read an article in USA Today, it's been about 2 years ago, that said there was like 60% of all college graduates, whatever year that was, the jobs that they got coming out of college were the first jobs they had ever had. And so, and I think we're doing our kids a misservice if we don't insist that they learn how to work, and they learn how to have a boss, and they learn how to take orders, and be accountable and be dependable. That's one thing. Another thing is, because there's so much to do, I saw parents try to fill every day of the whole calendar in the summer with fun things to do, for their kids. I mean, they're either going on vacation, they're going to camps, either Young Life or FCA or football camps or whatever, and they're all over the place. And so I think they miss out, a lot, because if you're going to play football, I know I'm old school. I think you need to be there, you know, working hard to get yourself, ready to play. Now, if it's a family vacation or something like that, I'd tell them, hey, you go do that. That's important. But just going to football camps all over the United States, I never saw much, sense in that. And we have so many kids today that are on some type of drugs, and I'm not talking about street drugs. I'm talking about for attention deficit disorders. When I grew up, I mean, I'm sure I had it, but and the guys I ran around with had it, but they just said, well, they're just knotheads, And now, everybody's, taking medication, and I don't know whether that's good or bad, but I hate to see that. And the other thing is that I see so many more parents that have an attitude that they want to try to prepare the road ahead for the child instead of preparing the child for the road ahead. And that being, what I mean by that is, the discipline, respect for your teachers and administrators and other students and everybody you encounter, experiencing adversity. It's okay to, to lose a football game. It's okay to not be a starter. It's okay to, strike out with the bases loaded in the bottom of the ninth. Those are all part of the learning process, of growing up and how you handle adversity, because adversity is going to come, and that's not what's important. But what's important is how you're going to react to it. But I see so many parents, they don't want their kids to have to experience any adversity in any area, whether it's athletics, they got a C in school, they didn't make cheerleader, they got cut from the soccer team, whatever. I think that's a huge part of growing up, and I just saw more and more parents try to protect their children, and they're doing them a disservice. Yeah. But yeah, it's a different world that they grow up in today.
Well, Coach, I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on, and this has been great, and I think our listeners will be very appreciative of it. And you have so much. I think we could go on all day.
Thank you, John. Enjoyed it.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in today. Breakfast at Stinson's. We are very happy to have you. Next week, we'll be back with another great guest. So please join us. In the meantime, come visit us at Stinson's. We're at 45th and Burnett Road. Come have a taco, a coffee, or a cocktail. Look forward to seeing you. Thanks.